Ron tells a story. Well, just remember, Ron, people are waiting to have their lunches. Oh, and then Rebecca and Jermaine tell stories. So, this could be painful. I got to tell you, is Brenda here today?
No.
You can't get a day's work out of that woman. Anyway, she's not here, but as you know, she was, to say that she was my right hand, hell, I was her right hand, for a very long time. And when she left, I frankly worried and wondered if we'd ever, in any way, shape, or form, be able to replace her. And I can think of no higher compliment to give Ron Lane than to say he's replaced Brenda and he's earned the same place in our hearts that Brenda had. So.
I didn't know how long Dr. D was going to speak after Matt and Danica, but it's tough following you guys. Not Governor Cooper, but it's tough following. Can you put up that slide, Chris? So you're probably wondering what Dr. Dempsey has planned for the future. And I hope that I'm the editor of his first project when he leaves here. And it's going to be a book about life lessons in leadership. And we thought we'd give you a sneak preview, but hold that slide for just a second. I believe sincerely that we're destined to be the people we become. In 1962, I was a young boy on an island called Okinawa, south of Japan. 8 or 10 years later, Dr. Dempsey was there in a very different way. He was a naval officer, and he was guiding his ship north from Vietnam, I guess, and into the port of Naha on Okinawa. So could you bring up that first slide? So this is what Okinawa looks like, and on the bottom left corner is Naha, and that's where the naval base was housed. I've spent my time in the middle region at Kadena Air Force Base. My father made liquid oxygen for the Air Force. But I wouldn't have guessed that when I was taking classes up there about ordnance and recognizing them, because it was not that many years beyond World War II, we had to take classes to recognize when a piece of material might be harmful to us. But I didn't know that I was going to meet a man later who inhabited that for a brief period of time. But when his first life lesson in leadership is steer your life in the right direction early and stay on course. Now I might point out to you that when he went into Okinawa, he must have been using a sextant, and it must have been the North Star at an odd angle because he missed the island completely. And that's a gospel true story.
That is a true story, but there is a backstory to it.
And with Dr. Dempsey, there always is.
No, I refuse to allow this story to be told. I did miss the island. I went to bed and I told the guys on watch at about, 3 o'clock in the morning, if we are where we think we are, you're going to see some lights on the starboard bow. That will be Okinawa. Well, 3 o'clock came and they saw the lights, but they were on the port bow. And so, instead of being in the East China Sea, we were in the Philippine Sea. Now, all seas are not created equal, but what we were doing is we were doing what they call dead reckoning navigating. You knew where you were when you started, and you knew that you were going at a course of, let's say, 270. So you got out your little plotter, and you plotted it out. 270 at 10 knots is 270 miles. If we want to go 270 miles to get to Okinawa, this is what we do. But when you are in the midst of what was always called the Northeast monsoon, which is all of the wind and the water and the waves and the bumps coming this way, and you had no stars, unlike this beautiful room, which seems to be full of stars. I can tell you right now that you are on Airport Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina, without any difficulty, because there are stars up there. That's what navigators do. That's what Christopher Columbus did, and that's what I did. Swear to God, I use the same technology that Christopher Columbus used. I looked at the stars and I tried to figure out where I was. When it's pouring rain, there are no stars. And so you get bounced and buffeted by the winds. And you think you're going 270, but you're actually going 180. And that's how you miss an island.
All I know is the airplane that I was on landed without a hitch. So, and by the way, remember, he was the one who told me not to go long. Lesson 2, find a career that fits. Yes, there is another story here. When Dr. Dempsey, I think he was in graduate school, was that correct? Okay. And he had a young wife, and he needed money, and he liked Harry Chapin. Some of you will get that joke. He applied for a job with a taxi company. This was after his service in Vietnam, and he had decided to grow his hair out long. True?
Yes, I'm looking at Linda Chamber, and it was about that long.
Yeah. So he went back the next day with his head shaved, pretty much, and he got the job. And you were a successful taxi driver for how long?
A couple of weeks.
And remember the title of his book, Lessons in Leadership, and remember item 2, find a career that fits.
Can I tell a quick one about the cab? And I'll tell you why in 2 weeks. The vehicle they assigned me was not the best. And it had a horn that beeped at random. And I was...
Wait a minute, wait, stop there. Surprisingly, usually when a beautiful woman was walking down the sidewalk.
No, this was actually in front of the A&P store in Williamsburg. I went to William & Mary for my master's, and I pulled up to the A&P store. There was a traffic light by the A&P store, and I pulled up, dropped off my fare, and got back in the line of traffic behind a policeman. A state trooper had one of those hats. Beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. You can imagine. Go ahead, Ron. I'm dying to hear more.
So avoid all jobs that require a haircut unless Tanya can give you one for free. And he's lived by that. Okay. Yeah. The second thing that made me believe that this is destiny, that I stand here today, is that in about 1982, I was one of the residence counselors at the Governor's School of South Carolina at the College of Charleston. And I worked there for 2 summers in a row, and I just missed his time at the College of Charleston. I mean, just missed it. And worked for what would become his best friend, Skip. And so I feel like that there's stars guiding me to this moment in time. And anyway, lesson 3. Always, always, always practice fiscal conservatism. So here's a typical conversation in Dr. Dempsey's office. The state's giving us a $1,000 bonus. Let's make it 2,000 at SCC. Brenda and Jermaine, find that money. I can't tell you how many times that I've shared with him concerns about our athletic budget. And he says, we'll figure it out, we'll figure it out. And for 33 plus years, by golly, you've been figuring it out, sir. So, good advice. Lesson 4. Hire the right people and put them in the right seat or stool. All or most of you know that at one point in time, Dr. Dempsey, and this was fairly young in my career here, he decided that we wanted to serve our male minority population with a guiding principle. Be a tough guy who gets things done. And so he hired Bun Crusher Smith. How long did he last, Doc?
Well, first of all, Bone Crusher Smith is the only heavyweight champion of the world with a college degree. I don't know if you know that. He went the distance with Mike Tyson. So this guy was nothing to trifle with. But he wasn't really interested in working at Sandhills. He was in a travel agency Ponzi scheme. And he kept asking people if they'd like to become a travel agent. And I'd say, well, why? What's in it for me? And he'd say, well, you get all this free travel. And people would sign up to become travel agents. Fortunately, there are none of you left who signed those papers. But John Turner and Suzanne Adams and Richard Goff, the three musketeers, came to me one day with an intervention. And they said, the Bone Crusher's really got to go. He's doing no work at all, and he's distracting those who are doing their work. And I said, well, he's a nice guy, by the way. And I said, you know, if I mentored him like 2 hours a day, is he salvageable? I said, no. So it was the dead of summer, there's nobody around, and I got to walk down to the student center and fire the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, I wasn't sure how this was going to come out. And I said, James, it doesn't seem as though you're really interested in a career in community college education. You seem more interested in a career as a travel agent. He said, I am. I said, well, I think it's probably best that we part ways. And James said, can I get paid at the end of the month? And I said, Jermaine and Brenda, find the funds.
Fiscal conservatism. Dr. D, how did I know that we would get through this together with laugh instead of tears? You and I have gone a long time together. You guys don't know this, but I came in 2001. In 2004, the college that I'd been serving previously got in trouble with Sachs COC. And the president called me and she said, will you come back and serve as evening dean and help us get the report? They were literally on warning for a year. And they had to do a whole second report. Lindsay, that's not going to happen here. But, so I went to Dr. Dempsey with a letter, and he quoted Robert Frost, actually. And he called me into his office the next day, and he said, sit down. And he said, I understand why you need to do this, because sometimes you have to be the person you claim to be. He's handed me a contract, blank contract, and said, if you get this done and you want to come back to us next fall, this contract's good for the next 12 months. I gave it to him in 6 months. He came to visit RCC in January that year, and I was down there, and they were successful in getting that cleared from their record. But it was the greatest kindness anyone's ever done for me in my life, for you to do that. And you want to tell the backstory on this one, too?
Yeah, the only thing that he got wrong, in typical Ron Lane style, he undervalued himself and wrote a smaller number for a salary. I told him pick any salary, any job. That's how good he was, and is. I don't do that often, as you can well imagine. But he came down, and the only change I had to make was I had to increase his salary because he didn't pay himself enough. And I said to Brenda and Jermaine,
Brenda wasn't here yet, it was just Jermaine.
But it was a great decision.
And it was the best decision on my part. Come back. Now, some of you know this and some of you don't, but Dr. Dempsey is hard to find in March sometimes. It's March, right, Doc?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
In the 6 months that I've been filling in for Brenda, and thank God she's coming back, I've taken 3 ideas to the board and they shot down 2 of them. Gary Evans is in the audience, so he can verify this. But Dr. Dempsey likes to say, if you can hit 333, you can find your way into the Hall of Fame. Well, we can't give you the Hall of Fame, Doc, but we took that one idea to the board and it was a unanimous decision. And we spent some money to accomplish it. But Dr. Dempsey's 5th lesson is, in the end, it's not what you leave with in your pocket, it's what you leave for others in your wake. And it's a naval expression in your honor. And Commander, SEC campuses are filled with the evidence of your impact on humankind. And no one will ever doubt that, but we have one more opportunity to do something about it. Next slide, Chris. Like my spelling? So how do we honor our favorite PhD Phillies fan in the bottom of the 9th? Dr. Dempsey, the Board of Trustees, voted unanimously that this sign will appear below the scoreboard on the Field of Dreams on this campus. Chris? Wow.
I thought I couldn't be surprised. I feel like Freddie Fenway or Walter Wrigley. Thank you.
So everybody else has said, I'm going to say it. I have to follow that? So, as others, I've been asked to say a few things about Dr. Dempsey this morning. Over the past few weeks, so many things have been said about Dr. Dempsey by so many people, including Dr. Dempsey. He set me up, and could have predicted. As I thought about what to talk about, one of the things that came to mind was Dr. Dempsey's April Fool's Day emails. They are uniquely Dr. Dempsey. They show his sharp wit, his sometimes self-deprecating side, and after reading through them, I have to say his slightly sadistic side. Raise your hand if you've been taken in by one of his April Fool's Day emails, even for a moment.
33 years weren't wasted.
So I'm going to share a few highlights, but not all 33 years, I promise. 2013. We were looking forward to our 10-year reaffirmation. Dr. Dempsey's email told us that our SACS COC VP was, quote, less than complimentary about the professionalism we seem to exhibit with our dress and appearance, end quote. And so, he was asking that we dress more formally during the visit. The email came with 2 attachments, photos of Wendy Dotson and Dr. Dempsey, both dressed in white dress shirts, navy blue blazers, and khaki pants. Picture that for a moment. Imagine the entire campus in what basically amounted to a grade school uniform. Now, I don't know if y'all noticed, but how many pictures in the slideshow was Dr. Dempsey in khaki pants, some shirt, and a navy blazer?
That's right.
I don't think it's a coincidence. 2014, we were figuring out what the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, was going to mean to us. In his April Fool's Day email, Dr. D shared that Tom Farrell, then program coordinator for our EMS program, needed volunteers to be defibrillated on stage during Employee Recognition Day. Always aware of the appearance of a bias, he was careful to state that it would be 2 males and 2 females, and hopefully 2 faculty and 2 staff. I told you, slightly sadistic. In 2016, the focus was on quote-unquote completion rates. He outlines 4 ways we were going to support our students in completion of degrees. For example, online students will be eligible to receive a degree or diploma upon submission of, are you ready? A completed application form. But they had to fill other requirements. They had to include a credit card number and a mailing address to which the diploma would be sent. This email gave a whole new meaning to the completion by design. Even though April of 2020 was a rough one, Dr. Dempsey still came through with his April Fool's Day sense of humor, letting us know we would be required to wear lanyards 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. while working from home. This was so state officials could monitor our activities or lack thereof. There would be a buzz if someone was inactive for 10 minutes, and it would be logged at the system office. Now, the thing that's most far-fetched about this was to think that the system office was somehow going to get involved at all. In reality, we were on our own, and we rocked it. We're just going to skip over the April Fool's Day email of 2021. Some of you may remember it was vaccination related. We'll leave that away. He was back in 2022 with an email about a trip to the basketball Final Four in New Orleans to the first person to sing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow," as well as his granddaughter did. And sure enough, he had folks in his office that day singing, "Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you tomorrow." Well, Dr. D, we love you today, we'll love you tomorrow, and we'll love you always. Thank you.
Now I have to follow that. I'm not going to be nearly that funny. Heather had emailed or called a while back and said we were supposed to lightly roast you while we were up here today. And I went home and I talked to Phil and I said, how do I lightly roast Dr. Dempsey? He's like Mary Poppins. He's practically perfect in every way. But there was this one time. I remember my first year working here, I had made you reschedule a meeting you had with Sid Schucknow not once but twice, and you got so angry with me that you followed me across campus getting angry at me until I got to my office. And you called me 10 minutes later to say that you were sorry and you knew we had to do it and it was okay. And Rick said, that's just the way Dr. Dempsey is. Every now and then he gets angry, but he lets it go quickly. And that's one of those things I think is wonderful about you. There was this other time. Remember when I got the new golf cart? Then the very first time Dr. Dempsey went on a tour with the golf cart driving it, he thought he could get it through the gazebo in the gardens. Now I know that there's a backstory there. There was probably rain and wind and you couldn't navigate. Oh, every time you borrow the golf cart, I get a little nervous. And then I thought, the best one, the one that's always going to stand out in my mind, was the story of your last foundation board meeting. Now, Dr. D had not been feeling well that week, and he was scheduled to have knee surgery, and he'd gotten a cold. And he'd actually canceled his trip to New York with the Board of Trustees, but had come to the foundation board meeting, and we had sat him up in the front, away from everyone, in the corner with his mask on, and we had put the president's report first in the meeting. And as he begins to talk to everyone, he said, "Jermaine," I thought, okay, no problem, go over and start helping him take off his jacket. Jacket's off, I carry it across and put it on a chair. And he says, I think this shirt is a bit too much too. Now he's wearing a polo shirt. And I thought, is this one of these moments where I'm gonna have to save my boss from himself? Has he had too much NyQuil? What's happening here? Now, it was October 24th, and I'll admit, I am not a sports fan, so I was unaware of the significance of that Monday and what had just happened the night before. So like a good little employee, I go over and I start to help him remove his polo shirt, and as I can see, there's another shirt underneath it. I think, oh, thank goodness. It's not that bad. And as we pull it off, it reveals
Billy's.
the Philadelphia Phillies jersey, which will stand out in my mind always as both one of the most traumatic and hilarious.
Well, the Phillies have made the World Series for the first time in a long, long, long time.
I knew that after I went back and Googled it. But at the moment, I was horrified. Oh, so that was my light. That's the best I could do, because pretty much every interaction has been wonderful.